Hi, everyone. I'm Scott Branley.
And I'm Alicia Coakley. Every member of the church has a story to share, one that can instill faith, invite growth, and inspire others.
On today's episode, we're going to hear how one man's commitment to keep his covenants and listen to the Spirit helped to save his life and the life of his wife. Welcome to Latter-day Lights. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Latter-day Lights. We're so glad that you're here with us this week, and we're really excited to introduce our guest, Steve Cypers. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, so for our audience, Scott is a little sunburned. For those of us who are actually watching, he's a little sunburned. He is in Hawaii right now, super jealous. We still had snow on the ground this morning, so that was a bummer.
Yeah. Not having hair. I was on a boat and I had to turn my hat around so that it wouldn't fall off. And this is the end result. This nice, very attractive.
Scott, if you just did makeup like I do, you just cover that right up, just hide it all. No.
Yeah.
Oh goodness. But enough about you, Scott. This show's not about you, right? We are
True.
So excited, Stephen. You did a fireside, right? Was it your stake, Scott, or the ward, or how did you guys?
It was in our ward,
connect?
yeah. Yep, it was for our ward.
Okay, gotcha. And you did a fireside, and you shared your story.
Yeah, my wife and kids were there.
Yeah, it was. I used to do firesides all the time, but I haven't done any in quite a while. And when my niece asked me to do it, and went over and did their young men, young women's fireside, and then Scott contacted me. I was a little shocked that I didn't know I'd ever be on a podcast.
You just never know. Yeah, you never know where your story's going to lead you, huh?
I actually tried to make your fireside, Steve, but I was recording another podcast at the time. And so as soon as it was done, I went over there because I knew that there was going to be treats. And so I'm like, okay, I missed the fireside, which was a bummer, but I still could get the treats, right? So But then my wife and kids told me how awesome your fireside was. I'm like, oh man, I got to have them on the show. So I'm glad that you're willing to come on and tell us your story.
Yeah, I've been excited to do this. So.
Cool. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Steve?
I've lived my whole life in Ogden and Riverdale area. I have 5 kids, 4 boys and a girl. I have 3 of my boys are married and have wonderful daughter-in-laws. I have 5 grandchildren, and just everything's going really good. I paint cabinets for Timeless Cabinets in Centerville, and kind of been painting my whole life ever since I was a little kid. I'm a 3rd generation painter, and my whole life's revolved around painting. So it's
wow,
kind of crazy.
Might have to hire you to come out to Texas because we're getting a house out there, and I don't want to paint anything. I can do it. It just takes me forever. Are you like one of the? Let me ask you. So when it comes to painting tall walls on stairs, are you like one of those people that do things really not OSHA approved? Are you putting ladders on top of ladders? And how do you guys do that? How do you paint those really tall?
Some stairs are horrible, and I have been in very dangerous situations before. Putting the ladder on paint buckets, and you do whatever you can to get the job done.
I have this thing that I always refer to. Anytime I feel like we need an invention that just makes sense, something that could be utilized on the regular, I keep thinking, why is it that we made it to the moon, right? we developed the technology to be able to literally leave this earth and go to the moon, and now even different planets and stuff like that, right? Outside of that. Yet it took us forever to put wheels on suitcases, or it took us forever, you know what I mean? To figure out how to paint a wall on a staircase, So I always think about that. Priorities, right?
And if you have a curved stairway, that's the worst.
Oh, I
Then the
bet.
Oh yeah.
stairs and the ladders don't match up real well.
Oh, yeah.
Well, your story kind
Crazy.
of has to do with some painting, right?
Yeah, it was kind of crazy that it ended up being that. I should have known better, but it
Right.
is what it is.
Well, why don't we move into your story, Steve? The floor is yours, my friend.
All right. My story starts back in the year 2000. I uh, I was finishing my basement, and if you look behind me, I was making my basement into a log cabin, and I just
Okay.
thought it was a really good look, and I wanted the basement to look like I was on vacation. And I'd been working quite a while to get my son's bedroom done for his birthday, and his birthday was on August 25th of 2000, and I was trying to get it finished so he could move in. And on August 25th, I hadn't finished his bedroom, and I had to go to my dad's shop to make the casings and the baseboard and things. And I was over there. It was a Friday, and making all the casings, baseboards, and I finally got done. And I was packing up to go home and put all the woodwork on. And my dad told me, he says, "Now make sure tomorrow when you're putting the lacquer on, that's the clear finish over the wood. He says, make sure you wear your respirator." And I was like, yeah, yeah. You know how you are when your dad tells you something. You hear it, it goes out the other ear. And I didn't think much about it. And got all the woodwork up that night and excited. Could hardly sleep all night. Woke up real early Saturday morning, the 26th, and got everything ready to spray. We had a busy day. I was going to spray that and then go to my kids' Little League football games that day. And I got going and got everything ready and started spraying. And I didn't have my respirator on. And as I sprayed around the room a little bit, a voice came to me, and it said, "Hey, go put on your respirator." And I shrugged it off, and I just kept spraying. And then the voice came to me again and said, "Go put on your respirator." And I blew it off again. And the third time, the voice told me to go get your respirator. And I went and got my respirator. And this is the actual respirator that I was wearing. It's a full face, so it has the glass shield.
Oh, wow.
And I put that on, and I hadn't even sprayed for another 2 or 3 minutes. And then as I'm sitting there spraying, I heard a thump sound. I didn't know what that was, and all I could see was flames. So ceiling, walls, everything was completely on fire, and I could see everything through this shield. And as I looked at my arms, I could just see the hair burned off. And I wasn't very smart that day. I even had shorts on and just a t-shirt. And I was just expecting to hurry and get it done and go to the Little League football games. And the next thing I know, I fell to the ground because the heat was so hot. I wanted to get away from the heat. And I fell down to the ground. And then I knew I had to get out of the room. And I had the doorway masked off, and I went to run through the plastic. And as I ran through the plastic, I hit the wall in the hallway, and then it knocked me down on the ground because I hit the wall so hard running out of the room. And the only thought in my head was, "Where's my wife? Where's my wife? I have to find her. Where's she at?" And I went running down the hall, and then went to go up the stairs. And I had a door at the bottom of the stairs, and it opens into the basement. It won't open into the stairs like almost everybody's. And the door was laying on the stairs, and I was all confused. I had no idea why the door would be laying on the stairs. Come to find out from the fireman later that it was the size of 5 sticks of dynamite. When that ignited, it blew the door off the door stops, off the hinge, and was laying on the stairs. That's how big the explosion was.
Oh my gosh. And so
And
what was it that caused the explosion?
my wife had been doing the laundry, which took the hot water out of the water heater. And then as the water heater started to heat more water, the fumes had gotten into the water heater room. And when that flame ignited, it just blew up like a bomb, and it blew the back wall off the house. I don't know if you saw any of the pictures that I gave Scott, but it blew the bay window right out, and then it lifted the ceiling up in the family room. But I climbed over the door, and I didn't know, but my legs had been burnt since I had shorts on. And as I was climbing over the door, it left blood streaks up and over the door because I'd been burnt so bad that it just left streaks on that door. And I get upstairs and I can't find my wife. I'm looking all over. Well, when that ceiling lifted up, a whole piece of sheetrock fell off of the ceiling and landed on her and knocked her out. And she was just laying on the floor in the family room, knocked out. And
Oh my
I
gosh.
just, and it's weird how you look around, and I didn't see certain things and I saw some things. The house didn't look disturbed at all. In my mind, I didn't see that the wall had been blown out or anything. So I went over and lifted the sheetrock off her, grabbed her by the arm, and she was knocked out. And I just knew the house was on fire. So I dragged her to the front door as she was knocked out. And as I got to the front door, she woke up and started asking what was going on. And I said, the house is on fire and we've got to get out of here. And she was all confused from being knocked out. She came to, and you know how on a Saturday morning you're just doing laundry and stuff. She wasn't dressed for the day. She just had a pair of shorts and a shirt on, no shoes. And she ran out the front door and over to the neighbors to call the fire department. And then as she left me, I still had my respirator on. I don't know, I didn't know what was going on really, and I had my respirator on. And as I take my respirator off, I can see something hanging from my fingers, and I didn't know what it was. And all the skin had slid off my arm and my fingers, and they just hanging like taking a glove off. You got a big long glove on, and you take it off, and
Oh
it's just
my
hanging out.
gosh.
And as I saw that, I looked down at my legs, and the skin had slid off my legs and was down around my ankles like a pair of pantyhose. And I
Oh
went into
my
shock.
gosh.
I didn't even know what was going on. I make it down the stairs, and I'm standing out in the driveway trying to figure out what was going on, going into shock. And as I'm standing there, um, two of the neighbors pulled up, and they pulled into the driveway, and they're asking me what was going on. I told them, and one was Brother Rich and Brother Jackson. And after this was all over and talking to them, they had both been inspired to get in their car and drive down the road, and they had no idea why. They just got in their cars and started driving. And as they saw me, they almost pulled into the driveway at the exact same time. And they laid me down on the driveway, gave me a blessing, and I, you're just trying to figure things out because everything happens so fast. Your mind just can't
Right.
comprehend what's going on. And I just kind of had a calming feeling come over me after the blessing. I just didn't even feel any of the burns at that point. I had no idea, other than looking at them, that I'd even been burnt. And then the ambulance shows up, and they put me in the ambulance, and they start cutting all my clothes off. I'd been burnt where my garments weren't. So just right at my shirt sleeve and then at my knees down. And if I'd have been wearing one piece garments, I'd have been better off because my garments came untucked when I fell on the ground, and I got burned across the back where they came untucked. I should have had one piece on. But
Really?
yeah, it's kind of weird. I just got burnt right across my back where they came untucked. And I had a t-shirt on, and the flames were so hot, the back of the t-shirt burnt off, and the only thing that was there was the garments. And uh,
Holy
so they
cow.
took all my clothes off, and then they started trying to stick a tube down my throat. And I was asking the people in the ambulance, what are you doing? And they said, well, when you're burnt like that, we have to get a tube down your throat very quickly or your throat will close off. And I said, oh, no, my throat's fine. It's not burned. I had my respirator on. And so they didn't have to stick that tube down my throat. And they got me all hooked up to the IVs. And about that time, my dad got there before the ambulance or the firemen, and my mom got there a little bit late, and she come driving over all the fire hoses, which you're not supposed to do. So a little bit of trouble for driving over the fire hoses, and it was kind of interesting. We only had one entrance into our neighborhood. There was not a separate entrance and exit. So all the neighbors were trapped in the neighborhood because that one entrance was blocked off from all the firemen and policemen and everything. And so they're all trying to get in the house and put the fire out. And it was just a mess. And they told me that they needed to take me to the hospital. And my wife was still kind of out of it. So, or you rode to the hospital with me in the ambulance. So she went to the hospital in the ambulance with me, and they took me up to Ogden Regional. And as they got me there, they decided that there wasn't anything that they could do for me at Ogden Regional. It was a little bit beyond what they could do. So at that time, they decided to life flight me down to the University of Utah. And my wife wasn't feeling really good. I think she probably had a concussion and her neck hurt. And so my dad flew with me down to the University of Utah. And I've been awake this whole time. I never got knocked out or anything. I remember the helicopter flight, and I was trying to figure out where we were by looking out the windows. We're flying, and we get down to the University of Utah, and they put me on a gurney and wheeled me into the hospital. And as they took me into a room, there were just all these people there waiting for me. And it was this little teeny room, but a ton of people in there. And they put me in there, and they had to start pulling off all that loose skin. And they had to get that off so there wouldn't be an infection from all that loose skin. And about that time, I don't remember a lot after that, because I think I passed out about that time where they were getting all that skin off me. It was a crazy time trying to think back and remember everything, but trying to think. I'll tell you, you don't realize how blessed you are to have the University of Utah here in Utah, have it be so close. Because after getting to know some of the other patients in there were people from Idaho and Wyoming, and people get burned in crazy ways. There were a couple of guys in there that had been in Yellowstone and fell through. You ever been to Yellowstone? It says, "Don't walk here, thin crust." And they were walking on the ground and fell through into boiling water, clear to their necks. And so they had third-degree burns from their neck down. And the one boy's girlfriend actually went under the water, and it ended up killing her. And there were people that were in fires in different states. They burned their garbage, and there were people that had started on fire from burning their garbage. But think how far those people had to come to the University of Utah. And I was blessed to be that close, that had just a few minute flight to get there. Plus, the other thing that was nice is your family's so close. My wife, I don't know if we hadn't had family help, she probably would have never left the hospital. But because we had so many family members, I was never left alone. It was either my wife, I had brother-in-laws, Dave Fowler and Connie Fowler. They were down there spending the night with me. Jeff and Jill, Libby. I had my aunt and uncle, Lynette and Alan Webb. Just all kinds of people wanting to help me out and be with me and spend the night with me. And it was a heck of a comfort to have somebody there with you all the time. And that was a blessing too, because there were some people that would be in the burn unit and get the wrong medication and have wrong reactions. And my wife, she was right there asking, "What are you giving him?" and keeping up on what they were doing to me. She was a trooper, and and she got a. We had a few relatives that would let her stay at their house while because our house was burnt and no place to stay. And when she wasn't at the hospital, she had to have somewhere to go. And I remember my sister even went shopping and bought her some clothes because all she had on was a pair of shorts and a shirt. And when she went to the hospital, she had the neighbor's flip flops on when she went to the hospital with me because she didn't even have a pair of shoes. It was like a really crazy time. And then you think of what everybody does for you and how they help you out. It's very amazing to have the family and friends to help you out.
Yeah. Well, and you said you have 5 kids?
I have 5 now. At the time, I had 3.
Okay.
I think Josh was 9 or 10, 10 probably. And then Jared was probably 8, and Justin was 5 or 6. And I think that I was even told that my life flight helicopter flew over their football field as it was leaving because I never made it to the Little League games that day. So they got to find out later that day that I'd been burnt and come and visit me a few times. And then since then, I've had a son and daughter since I was burned. But it's amazing what your family can do for you, though.
So, Steve, I have a question. When you came to, what was the pain like, and also how do they fix burned skin? Like, what's the process there?
They have to rate it on how bad it's burnt. So I had areas that were first degree, second, and third degree. And the third degree burns, they have to remove the dead skin, and then they have to do a skin graft to repair it on the third degree. And the second degree, they just bandage it up and try to make you as comfortable as you can. But waking up the next day and being in the hospital and trying to figure out, where you're at and what's going on. And then they had a pain pump on me, and my hands were so burnt and wrapped up that I couldn't do anything with my hands. So I had to push every time I wanted a shot of I think it was morphine. I had to push it with my toe to get some relief. And then it seemed like they had that set to all I do is basically go to sleep after I'd get that shot. And but real quickly after you get burned, I swear it was the next day, the physical therapist came in and they got me up and told me that we needed to start doing physical therapy the very next morning. I was a little shocked because I'm like, leave me alone and let me just lay here and kind of relax because you're in so much pain. And as the doctors come in and they start doing all these things, you just can't even believe the pain on that. Uh, then something else that happened to me, I talked about when if I hadn't had the respirator on, my throat would have sealed shut. Well, your arms and everything, when you get burnt, you swell really bad. Well, you'll swell to the point where your skin can't stretch anymore, and then it's going to tear. And they never wanted it to tear because it would take too long to heal. So they would have to go in and slice the skin and give it that relief. But that would also extend the amount of time that it took to heal. So my legs were so stretched out from I think it's the water that your body's flooding into it to kind of heal it. And my legs were just at the max where they were afraid they were going to split. So they said that they were going to have to slice my legs and give them that relief. And I asked them, please wait. Let's not do it right now. And we had so many family and friends praying and and that I wouldn't have to have that. And the next morning they came in to slice the legs so that they would have that relief, and they'd gone down overnight. And I think
Oh,
it's from just the family and friends and the ward. Everybody was praying for me to pull through, and I didn't have to have that. I was extremely blessed. It's amazing how many times I was blessed throughout this process, and that was a big one at the time, to be able to not have to have that split.
right. How long was it before your kids got to see you, and how did they take that? Because I imagine that was kind of a scary sight for them, right?
I don't remember how. You remember how long until they came up? A couple of days or longer? About 3 or 4 days before they ever came to visit me in the hospital. Uh, and I'm not sure exactly. I know my grandma, when they told her, she was like 97 years old, I think, and she thought I'd died during it. And she was just convinced that I'd died through the whole thing, and they just weren't going to tell her because they thought it would be hard on her. But I think I was there a day to 2 days, and they told me I had to have skin grafts. So that's where they take skin off of a healthy part of your body, and then they transplant it. And my thighs were fine. I don't know, Scott, if you looked through the photo album, you can see on my thighs where they harvested the skin graft, and then they could put it on my burns. And I don't know, I've heard different ways they take it off. It looks like a little cheese grater, and they take the skin off in strips, and then somehow they mush the skin through a press to make it wider so it will cover more area. And I don't know if you can see my hand. There's a seam on my hand right about there where you can see where it wasn't wide enough, so they had to seam it. And but I thought the burns hurt and caused me a lot of pain, but the areas that they took the skin grafts from actually hurt worse than the burns. It was so
Really?
excruciating. I thought I was in pain before, but when they did the skin graft, it was unbearable. The my thighs where they took that from, and I don't know what happened, but they put some type of a bandage over the skin graft and then wrapped them, and something went wrong, and then the bandage stuck to the skin graft and they couldn't get it off, and they had to sit and pick it off, and it was just put you through the roof painful. And then as you put a skin graft on, they had to staple up and over each finger to staple the skin graft on so that it would stay on. Kind of like, I kind of compare it to laying sod. Sometimes when you lay sod, some of it dies and some of it doesn't. And they told me they hope that the skin graft will take, or they'll have to redo some areas. And the thought going through your head is, I don't want to go through this again. You just don't want to have those donor sites again. It was horrible. But so they went in and came and told me that I was going to do the skin graft, and they took me in, and it was an hours and hours of surgery, and apparently pretty bloody surgery, because I think they even had to do like a blood transfusion, because it's a real bloody process. And uh, then they left me alone for a day or two. I didn't have to do physical therapy, and it was a couple of day break, and then they came in and wanted to do the physical therapy. And after that skin graft of laying there for days, and they put me on a table and tilted it up so that I could stand up. And when the blood went into my feet, I thought it was going to pop my toes off. It hurt so bad.
Really? It's crazy to me, like you're talking about this whole process and stuff, how I don't know, the thing that I kept thinking of was the actual experience itself of like being in an explosion was less painful than the healing. And isn't that funny? I mean, I think sometimes in life that's just so true to whatever it is that we're going through. Like our experience is horrific, but it's the healing that really hurts the most, like when you have to fix things and when you have to face things and you have to move forward and maybe even, move some things around in your life, right? Like
Yeah.
that, oh my gosh, that's just insane. So how long were you in the hospital for and everything? Like how long did this procedure go?
So when the doctor came and talked to me, he said I was burnt 33% of my body was third degree burns. And so on average, you're going to be in the hospital a day for every percent that you're third degree burnt. And then he also told me, he said, if you work really hard with the physical therapist, you work hard, you eat everything we bring you for your food, you'll heal quicker. And then he asked me at that time, he said, do you smoke? And I said, no. And he said, do you drink? And I said, no. And he said, because you don't smoke and drink, your body's healthier and you'll heal quicker. And I was excited about that because I guess your skin kind of is a little bit thinner, or it does something when you smoke. It does something to your skin, and it takes away the healing ability of your body to heal in any situation. So I was extremely glad I didn't smoke at that time. And but I made it a point right then, and I said I'm going to work hard. I'm going to do everything they tell me, whatever the physical therapist tells me to do. I'm going to eat all my food because apparently your body is in trauma and it just burns calories like crazy trying to heal. So you need all the food that you can eat, and you know how hospital food is. You don't really want to eat it anyway, but and it wasn't the greatest food, but I I put it away and started through the healing process. Um, and I just worked extremely hard to get out of there. I pushed the physical therapy like crazy. I did everything they told me. Um, and then I got to the point after I was there for 18 days, they told me that I was going to be able to go home in 18 days. And I was so excited. I was just done with the hospital. And I think my wife was probably even the most happy because,
Yeah.
well, it's one thing to be in the hospital when you're sick, but to have to be up there when you're not is tough. But luckily, she did have a few breaks with family. And so they had to take my wife and train her how to change my bandages. And they were changing my bandages twice a day. They do it every morning and every night to make sure that everything's clean. And they'd take you and put you on a stainless steel table and wheel you into the cleaning room and lay you there and just scrub all your burns and then wrap them with this different ointment that they had. I think it was called Silvadine. It was this white ointment, and it would uh, really heal a burn quite well. And so they had to take her in and show her how to do everything. And they had to okay it before I could go home because they had to make sure that somebody was in the house was able to do it. Um, and I'd had that blessing on the driveway from my neighbors, and then I had another blessing in the hospital before my skin grafts. And it's amazing how it just calms you down. And I was able to get such relief and just feel comfort at the time that I got the blessing and knew everything would be okay. Uh, it did wipe me out for quite a while, but when we got home, the problem with going home is we didn't have a house because our house was burnt so bad that nobody could live here. Uh, and so I got to move in with my mother-in-law, and you hear all the mother-in-law jokes about how bad mother-in-law. Well, my mother-in-law is fantastic. She is the most wonderful woman you'll ever meet. And my father-in-law passed away years ago. I think my wife was about 11 when he passed away. And my mother-in-law raised 7 children on her own. And she is just a wonderful, wonderful person. And we got to live with her while the house was burnt down. And my wife would have to change my bandages in the morning and at night, just like at the hospital, and it would take 2 hours each time. It takes a long time. You would have to scrub everything down and then wrap each finger individually. And it just, you have to put something on your skin first. I can't remember. It was like a cheesecloth type thing so that when you wrap it, it won't stick. And then it will unwrap easier. And then every other day, we'd have to go down to the hospital and they'd have to look at him to see how she was doing on washing and everything. And they were really proud of her because she had done such a good job and really became such a wonderful nurse. And she was just doing a fantastic job doing that. And still doing the physical therapy. I was going to a physical therapist and making it through everything and doing really well. And then one day I went to the physical therapist and my leg started hurting really bad. And I couldn't do the physical therapy. And the physical therapist was like, come on, I know you can do better. You've been doing great. And I just didn't have the strength in that leg. And then as the days progressed, I got worse. I got from limping to being on crutches and into a wheelchair, and didn't know what was wrong, but there was something wrong with my leg. And it was right around that time I finally went and visited my grandma, and she had fallen down and gotten put in a nursing home, and they were taking care of her. And I went in to see her and show her that I was still alive. And then right after I went in and said, hey, I'm still around, I'm out of the hospital, and she died 2 days later. And I don't know if it was just from relief that I was still around, but she passed away. And I got to go to her funeral, and I gave the opening prayer at her funeral. And I was in so much pain at the funeral that I had to be in a recliner because that's the only way I could get relief on my leg was to lay flat. And while we were at the funeral, I kept calling the hospital and the physical therapist and telling them how much pain I was in, and they were trying to figure out what was wrong. And as we were at the funeral, they found out that I'd had a blood clot. And so I had a blood clot from my groin all the way down to my big toe. And they told us to get to the hospital as soon as we could. And so we rushed down to the hospital. And as we got there, they did an ultrasound and they confirmed that I had a blood clot through my entire left leg. And so I got put back in the hospital. And at this point, I was really freaking out because I thought, man, I made it through all this and was doing great. And now this is going to kill me. And I really was scared. My wife even told me that the blood clot scared her a lot worse than the burns. And as I'm laying there in the hospital, my uncle was taking some of the family members to the airport to see them off from the funeral. And he stopped by and gave me a blessing. And it was at that time I knew everything would be okay. I was just completely calm and knew that I would be okay. And I just had to lay there for another 3 days in the hospital on blood thinner. And then I was able to go home again. But boy, talk about a scare. And then I told you how the burn hurt and then the skin grafts hurt. Well, a blood clot hurts worse than the burn or the skin graft. Oh my gosh. I can't even tell you how bad a blood clot hurts. I was in even more pain than I could ever be in. And I'd just barely gotten rid of all the other pain. And now this got brought back and just excruciating pain. I'm just glad I didn't have to have all three of them at one time. they
right?
at different times. But it was just amazing to me. But if I look at all the blessings in my life, though, wearing the respirator, having my garments, when you go to the temple and they told you they'd be a shield and a protection to you, I never thought that they would be that protection for me. And they protected me and helped me. And then having the blessings, I've been pretty healthy my whole life. Hardly ever had to have had a blessing for anything. and then to have all these blessings from different priesthood holders in my life. What a blessing to have the priesthood and to be able to have those blessings and have that comfort and healing. And my whole experience was horrible, and we had to have the house rebuilt and everything, but if I look back on it, it was a very big learning experience, and you get to see what life's all about, and it's all about your family. Because your house can burn down, you can lose all your possessions, but at least you still had your family. And we learned that firsthand. With here we both are out of the house and not one possession, but we both had each other still, and were able to take care of each other, and got to keep your family there.
Yeah. Oh, wow. What an incredible story.
Yeah. So you still live in that house then today?
Yep, I'm still here. So got the basement finished, and when I refinished it, I made my dad spray the lacquer because I was too afraid. And here's the scary thing. So we went through every precaution possible to respray the basement, and we turned off all the pilot lights and did everything. And then we had a doorbell down here, and my dad's down here spraying, and the neighbor kid came and rang the doorbell. And if you ever look on a doorbell, there's a little spark, and it could have burnt the whole house down again from that little spark. It was just crazy that he rang the doorbell right when we were spraying that lacquer on again.
Wow. Oh my gosh. That's insane. Well, so I have a question for you, Steve. In the process of healing, like obviously there was a lot of help that you needed, like with your wife making sure that she was bandaging your wounds and everything and getting you to and from the hospital. And I know that there are some people who are just really good at accepting help, and then there's other people like me who's we just like doing things ourselves, right? What type of personality are you? Was that kind of hard to let people help you?
Yes, because I do like to do everything myself. But my family, I had been doing food storage and had my food storage, and I had my sister-in-laws and their families came and took all of our food storage and cleaned it and got all the smoke and everything off it. And we got most of it back. And our families were wonderful. They did so many things for us. They'd come and clean different things. And what a process to get that smoke and everything off. But yeah, it's such a blessing to have family around you.
Yeah. How did that affect your testimony? Just being able to be almost like a source of other people being able to be blessed from giving. How did that affect your testimony?
I mean, I had a strong testimony before, but it has strengthened my testimony. I believe in, I really like the service part of the church. My son's on a mission down in Texas, and that's his favorite part of his mission is being able to do service. And my boys and my daughter, they all love to do different things, building or cleaning or whatever. And everybody likes to help each other out. And it's just a nice way to help people and is in service.
And Steve, how long did it take until you were fully recovered back to living a normal life?
It took me about a year to be able to bend my fingers normal again. I'd have to sit and manually push them down. But to be able to do that, I was lucky because the palms of my hands didn't burn. It was just the backside. If you you can straighten your hands okay like that, but to be able to bend them, but if you'd have burned them on both sides, it would have just been horrible. And but it's amazing how long it did take to feel normal again and to be able to get around and do what you need to do.
Wow. That is just absolutely incredible.
It took about 7 months for him to fix our house to where we could move back in. So it's been 23 years. I know we moved back in March. So it's been about 23 years. We've been, well, probably 22 because it was in '01 when we moved back in. So
Yeah. I love when you were talking about during your healing process how the doctors gave you very specific instructions about like the foods that you needed to eat and how you needed to take care of your body, because it really helped with the process of healing and everything like that. And even with your physical therapy and them doing it right away, I've heard, I know like my dad, he had some extensive heart surgery and stuff done. It was the same thing. They had him up and out of bed as soon as possible. And a lot of the reason why is because they talked about how important it is to keep a body in motion. That a body that's in motion gets a chance to heal. And I think just, it makes me think about the word of wisdom, right? It makes me think about how we're taught that our bodies are temples and that we really do need to take care of them and everything. You said that you'd pretty much always been pretty healthy and stuff, but did that affect your testimony at all? Just knowing that, the fact that you were healthy and that you were living the word of wisdom pretty much cut your hospital time almost in half, right? Because you said it would have been about 33 days and you got out in 18. So
what a blessing. And I was lucky too, because I had been jogging and lifting weights and everything before this, and was in really good shape at the time. And I just think when this happened, I went in probably the best shape that I could have been in. And I hope it doesn't happen to me now, because I wouldn't be doing very well.
Oh.
At the time, I was still really healthy and young, and what a testimony to be able to do the things that you want in life and be physically fit. And I gotta say a lot for being healthy. After I've been sick before, and you're thinking, oh, this is going to end. It's going to end, and can I get through just having a little cold and how horrible it is?
Oh, wow. Wow. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for jumping on here today and for sharing your story. Are there any last thoughts that you have that you'd like to share with the audience?
I was trying to think of anything, but I couldn't. I just want to emphasize, family again. I can't picture my life without my family, and we're so excited to get our son back from his mission and have our family back together. And seems like forever that he's been gone, but we've had the other three go, and they all come back, and life resumes. And just to have the family keep growing, and the grandkids are great. I told my kids the other day that I was going to be on this podcast, and if I had died at that time that the burn happened, I wouldn't have two of my kids, wouldn't have any of my daughter-in-laws, my grandkids, and I just can't imagine my life without all of them there, and being able to be around them. Just very extremely blessed, and to have the life that I have.
Well, I think it's important, like you said, to listen to the spirit, right? That prompting to put that mask on probably made it so that you're here today and that you can spend time with your kids, and that you had additional kids, right?
Oh, yeah. So if I would have had not put the respirator on, I would have been inhaling the lacquer into my lungs. And when that explosion happened, it would have blown my lungs out like a hand grenade, and it would have killed me right on the spot. It would have been instant that I would have died. My wife was even telling me, I was asking her some questions, and she said when she was upstairs, she could feel the air being pulled out of her lungs. And it had to be during that explosion. And then when the explosion hit, she could feel it in her head, that pressure on her head, but she felt like the oxygen was being pulled out. And I was thinking, it kind of is like a tsunami. When a tsunami comes and it pulls all the water away from the shore and then rushes back in, because the explosion is kind of that way. And then And it didn't ever affect my hearing, but her ears hurt after. And then her neck hurt for a while after being hit on the head with the sheetrock. But yeah, I don't know if you've seen the photo album, but there's some pretty crazy pictures in the photo album of the way the house was burnt and stuff. So,
Well, we'll put some of those pictures in so people can see.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting because you think about it and you think if you hadn't listened to that prompting, not only would you have not been here, but there's a very good chance that your wife may not have been here either, because like you said, you were able to get upstairs and you were able to get her, to the doorway and stuff like that and get her up and moving. Who knows what could have happened if she didn't wake up on her own or if someone didn't find her in time. And so, really just, so important. It makes me think of the quote that our prophet gave to us not too long ago in one of the general conferences where, he talks about, in coming days, we're not going to be able to survive spiritually without the guiding, directing influence of the Holy Ghost. And even though this is a story that happened, 23 years ago, it still is applicable, right? Like the prophet's words are still applicable. Like you guys could not have survived that ordeal if you hadn't listened to the Spirit, and thankfully they gave you, the Holy Ghost gave you a couple chances, right? Because sometimes we think we know best, right? But thankfully, he didn't give up on you, and you were able to listen and save your life and your wife's life, and even the lives of your other two children who hadn't been born yet. So that's just such an amazing thing. I had one other little thought, because I know that we have guests that are listening to this story and they have had something happen to a loved one who probably were wearing their garments and were keeping their covenants, and that loved one didn't survive. And so for those listeners who are experiencing that feeling of, well, why not my loved one? I had my own problem dealing with that when my brother passed away, and going back to the temple and in being reminded of those covenants and the promises that are made, I was reminded, just like you had said, that that those garments are there to be a shield and protection until our work on earth is through. And so if someone was wearing their garments and they were keeping their covenants and they were living in such a way that they, were really trying to live righteously, and they didn't make it, just know that it was because their work was finished and yours, Stephen, was not, and that was a big reason why you're still here today, is because you had more work to do. Whereas those who, didn't survive, I truly believe that any other work they have left to do can be done from either side of the veil. So I just wanted to leave that with listeners and just let you guys know, like, we are so happy to hear that your story had this beautiful ending, and that, you were able to grow your testimony and grow your family after this. And it's just, our Heavenly Father can use all of our stories for good, right?
When you were saying that, if I would have died downstairs without my mask, and then my wife could have been burnt, our neighbors heard the explosion, came outside and looked around and didn't see anything, and all went back in their houses because they didn't see anything wrong. And so I don't know when they would have noticed that the house was on fire, but it was loud enough to hear, get them to go out and look, and then not even think about it and go back in their house. When my wife ran over to the neighbor's house, they were all just in the house and didn't know anything had happened. So, and it had to be pretty loud.
Well, Stephen, thank you so much for jumping on today and for sharing your story and your light with us. We really, really appreciate it. And to all of our listeners, guys, we, Scott and I say it all the time. We love doing this. We love being able to provide this platform where others can share their stories and can help to grow the testimonies of those who are listening. And we're so thankful for our listeners and for all of you guys' great comments. If you are listening to this story today, please be sure to like, share, and comment Stephen's story. Definitely get that out there so that others can hear about the amazing miracles that Heavenly Father put in place and all of the blessings and stuff that he was able to receive and his family was able to receive from this. And if you guys have a story that you'd like to share, we would love to hear about it. So head on over to latterdaylights.com and you can go to the very bottom of the homepage and there's a little form there that you guys can fill out. It's pretty simple to do. Or if you know someone who has a great story, reach out to us and let us know. And we would love to hear whatever's out there.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. And thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. And we will talk to you guys next week. Till then, take care. Have a great week.